What's up, guys? It's your boy Zawoki back at with some more of the Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger videos. And this one is very confusing. The time of death, obviously between the hours of 1:48 and 4:27, I do believe. Does it matter? Yes and no. The phone exchange between Chris and Nicole that morning in this detailed analysis is very puzzling. I feel that this may be onto something as well that might unlock another pointed finger at Nicole Kessinger. So, with that being said, before we go any further, if you guys could do me a solid favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting that wiper icon down at the bottom right, hit that bell icon next to it. So when I do post videos like this one, you guys will get that little ring notification that I've posted that video, and then you guys can watch, comment, like, and share. And again, thank you guys so very much. We are so close to 60,000 subscribers, and it's all because of you guys. So keep on doing what you guys are doing, and eventually, hopefully one day, fingers crossed, we will hit that 100,000 subscriber goal. But also make sure you guys don't forget to subscribe to Miss Jade. This is the YouTube channel that I definitely do enjoy watching. A lot of you guys have been sending me her clips and videos and so forth like that, so I definitely want to give the creator her spotlight as well, because she's the one that made the video. So again, thank you guys for doing all the above. And with that being said, let's get into the video.
Continues. Christopher gave consent.
I know I'm going to pause, so bear with me while I pause and stuff like that. I know you guys want to watch it without any interruptions and so forth. The link is in the description if you guys don't want to watch my commentary or my adding on. But the way that he came out, where's my ring? The way that he came out, does that not look sus in itself? Like he was trying with when he had it like this or whatever on the hand or whatever. I can't do it because mine's rubber ring. But the way that he came out, like he wanted to chuckle, he wanted to smirk, he wanted to smile. And remember, Nicole Kessinger is the one that said, "Pawn it, man." Why would you pawn a ring if you know the person's missing? Not deceased, missing at the moment. Could be at a friend's house. She made it sound like that, oh, Shanann was punishing him. And when I say she, Nicole Kessinger said that maybe Shanann's punishing him or just took off for the day, didn't want to be around him. But why would you say pawn it, man? That's where another thing that's very suspicious.
To check the entire house. No one was found in the residence. Christopher did come up to me holding Shanann's wedding ring and stated he found it on the nightstand. When Nicole asked where Shanann's phone was, Christopher went to the couch upstairs and found it between the cushions. He did not know what the password to Shanann's phone was. Nicole knew it. Possible date of birth of their unborn son, and turned it on.
She changed it when she was gone for her trip to Arizona, and then when Chris tried to get into it, couldn't.
Christopher gave consent to look at her phone. No calls were made that morning. I contacted Detective Baumhover and requested he come to the residence. Christopher stated Shanann arrived home from her trip around 2 a.m. He was asleep at
1:48 to be exact.
The time. He woke up around 5 a.m. to get ready
4:23, I do believe, is in the discovery.
For work, and they began talking about them separating. Christopher stated it was a civil conversation and they were not arguing.
So this is what doesn't make sense, okay? So he apparently murdered the girls before getting back into bed with Shanann. Okay? So you're telling me he murdered them around when they went to bed and then murdered her around the argument time? That's why I don't believe that he murdered them twice. I mean, it's horrific to murder them once, but for him to sit there and say he did it twice, I just don't understand, like, that part of it. I don't know.
But they were emotional. Christopher stated they had been talking about separating for a few weeks. Christopher stated
he was discussing separating. She didn't want to. She wrote him letters saying, Chris, I adore you. I love you. You're my rock. You're my everything. He was already on the boat ready to sail off with Nicole Kessinger, but she was trying to fight for it.
he had tools stolen in the past and now he unloads his truck on his Fridays. Christopher stated Shanann was in bed at the time. Christopher stated Shanann told him she was going to a friend's house today with their 2 children. Christopher stated,
A friend's house. Couldn't you be more exact? Oh, that's right. You can't be exact because you murdered them.
he did not ask Shanann which of her friends' houses she was going to go
Exactly.
to. Christopher stated he went to a job site, oil well, past Hudson, Colorado, to check on it. Christopher stated he was there alone for a few hours. Christopher said,
But Tony said he would be out there at, what did he say, 7:30 to 8? So if he was out there at 6-ish, the end of 6, how's that?
he was an operator for Anadarko. Shanann's mother called during this time and was adamant that Christopher had done something and that I needed to check the GPS on his truck. Christopher's work truck has GPS on it. Detective Baumhofer and I checked the residence thoroughly.
So why didn't they check Nicole Kessinger's GPS on her truck? Because that silver truck was a work truck as well.
Shanann's purse, wallet, phone, credit cards, etc. were at the residence. We observed nothing suspicious inside the residence. Okay, so now we have a timeline. From this first report taken, Shanann arrives home around 2 a.m. Chris wakes up for work at 5 a.m. and had an emotional conversation about separating with Shanann. Looking back in hindsight, we know these times Chris Watts gave here in his first statement were incorrect. We later learned that Shanann arrived home at 1:48 a.m. and the emotional conversation was supposedly had around 4 a.m. Chris Watts.
And the reason why we say 4:23 is because the sensors downstairs started going off showing movement. Could it have been Dieter? Could have been, but it could have been Chris. But again, he said he didn't work out that morning, so why would he have been up that early? Murdering, doing the act.
Later goes on to say. Also, the neighbor's security camera, we see Chris start his truck up a lot earlier than he originally told the detectives. So let's look at the timeline of Chris Watts' phone that day, August 13th, 2018. The first activity we see on Chris's phone is at 1:48 a.m. The Vivint security alert. At 2:18 a.m., the home's router logs an unspecified activity in Watts's phone. I hope we get answers to what this is further into the report. The next movement is Chris leaving home at 5:48 a.m. Chris drove to his first work area of the day. This is estimated 45 minutes away from the Watts family home. The first lot of activity we see on Chris's phone begins at 6:30 a.m. Watts made 3 unanswered calls to his workmate Roberts. At 6:31 a.m., he then sent his co-worker Roberts a message asking, "Where are you at?"
Why would he be asking Rob, unless he was making sure that nobody was coming?
At 6:32 a.m., Roberts replied saying he was getting fuel in Kersey. Watts called Roberts back, but again got no answer. He then sent Roberts 2 messages, telling Roberts he was going to survey, then messaging him asking him, "Where are you going first?" At 6:33 a.m., Roberts replied telling Chris he was going to DPC state. Chris replied with a thumbs up emoji. Looking back at this in hindsight, we can see Chris was making sure no one was going to surprise him by turning up to the worksite. From the minute Chris arrived at Survey 319, he made the 3 unanswered calls to his workmate. Does that
So during this time while he's disposing of his family, being again a monster, he's calling while digging and unaliving his children and dumping them. Like, how does anybody think that this can all be done in the 38 minutes of uninterrupted time that he was out there? There's no way. There's literally no way.
mean during the time of these calls and text messages, his daughters were sitting in the back of his truck, still alive? At 6:35 a.m., Roberts messaged Watts and advised him that another workmate, Chad, may be coming out to Survey to stroke up the pump. Watts responded asking Roberts to let him know. At 6:39 a.m., Chris tried to call Chad but got no answer. He then sent him a message asking Chad if he was heading out to Survey. At 6:41 a.m., he then messaged Chad again about pumping up the 1029. At 6:43 a.m., Chad replied to Watts, "Well, since you're out there, you want to fire it up? Have Cody bring his cables." At 6:45 a.m., Watts replied back saying, "Okay, I will." Chad replied back saying, "I'll head that way in a bit." The next message is at 6:59 a.m., so it's been 15 minutes since the last activity on Watts's phone. From the time he arrived on site, he has been calling and text messaging his co-workers to make sure absolutely no one was going to turn up on site at Survey 319. This has been the first noticeable gap from the activity on Watts's phone. At 6:59 a.m., he received a message from his co-worker, Roberts. Roberts told Watts, "I guess I'm headed out that way to start up the 1029, and Chad will be meeting out there." At 6:59 a.m., Watts replied, "Okay." So, Watts has been warned that his workmates will need to be heading out his way soon, but no.
So I feel like he was just doing that to obviously try to find out how much time he had to do his deed and so forth, but
Not right away. The next activity from Watts is at 7:43 a.m. This has now given Watts a 45-minute window. At
which is 38 minutes of uninterrupted time.
7:43 a.m., Watts takes a picture of a leak around a pipe. He then called his co-worker Luke and held a 1-minute 45-second conversation. Roberts messaged Watts and asked, "How's it look?" Watts replied, "Fresh, LOL." Looking back in hindsight, that reply from Chris just minutes after burying his wife and disposing
And then
of his
LOL.
children in the tanks is rather disturbing.
Very much.
At 7:47 a.m., McNeil called Watts and held a 2-minute conversation. At 7:51 a.m., Roberts asked, "Is it a lot?" And Watts replied with the picture of the oil leak by the pipe. At 7:55 a.m., Roberts asked, "Want me to bring some gator? We can try and pressure test the line too if you want." At 7:55 a.m., Watts replied, "I got it handled. Thanks though." So there's no more
Of course he would say
activity
that.
until 8:25 a.m. That gives Chris a 30-minute window. At 8:25 a.m., Chris made a 23-second call to Shanann's phone. At
That one right there is the fake call to make it look like he was, "Hey, where you at, honey?" Kind of fake, whatever have you.
8:26 a.m., Chris Googled up the school his daughters were enrolled to start,
What
then
an
called
idiot.
the school to inform them his girls will no longer be starting school there.
Like, I don't get how this man thought that annihilating his family and then unenrolling them from school was gonna be like no flags. Like this is the like I don't know if he thought that he wasn't gonna get away with it by doing this, but this was like an oxymoron kind of thing. Like he wasn't thinking at all.
The
He
next
wasn't thinking at all,
activity on
period. But
Watts's phone isn't until 9:05. That gives Chris a 34-minute window. At
and the funny thing is this whole time he's not contacting Nicole Kessinger like he would normally do on a everyday basis while they were dating.
9:05, Chris calls the realtor about selling his house. The next lot of activity
Idiot.
isn't until 10:10 a.m., this being the longest gap, giving Chris Watts a 1 hour, 5-minute long window. At 10:10,
And then probably Sandy was probably calling Shanann. How's your morning? How was the flight come back in from Arizona? She got no response, so that's when she started getting upset, probably.
10 a.m., Chris Googles the lyrics for the song Battery by Metallica. At 10:28 a.m., Shanann's mum Sandy messaged Chris and asked Chris, is Shanann okay? Chris called Sandy's phone and Sandy called him back. So this is the first time we start seeing family and friends worry if Shanann is okay. You would think this would have made Chris panic, especially it being Shanann's mother.
No kidding.
But no. From 10:33 to 10:41 a.m., Chris searched the internet for hotels in Aspen.
That's how dumb this guy was. That he thought he was going to book a trip with Nicole here.
10:42 a.m., he then called the Western Snowmass Resort. At 10:44 a.m., Shanann's mother called Chris. At 10:45 a.m., Chris Googled up Groupons. At 10:51 a.m., Chris called Shanann's mum back. There is no more activity on Chris's phone until 12:15 p.m., giving Chris a 1 hour 25-minute window. At 12:15 p.m., Chris's co-worker Josh messages asking Chris if he's heard from Shanann today, telling Chris Cassie and Nikki are worried they can't get hold of Shanann. At 12:16 p.m., Watts took 2 photos of sunflowers in an open prairie. At 12:17 p.m., Watts received an alert from his Vivint panel. We now know this is the time Nicole Atkinson was at the house, and the doorbell camera picked up Nicole, so Chris could see exactly what was going on at his house. At 12:18 p.m., Watts called Nicole Atkinson. At 12:21 p.m., Watts messaged Josh and told him he talked to Nikki. Shanann went to a friend's house with the kids today. I haven't heard from her since. I will keep you updated though. At 12:21 p.m., Josh replied, the girls were worried. So, as you can see here from this timeline, that by lunchtime, Shanann's family and friends were very worried about her. At 12:27 p.m., Chris called Nicole Atkinson again. At 12:27 p.m., the realtor messaged asking Chris if he finished the basement or do any other upgrades to the house. At 12:31 p.m., Shanann's friend Addie messaged Chris asking if Shanann was okay. It's not like her not to respond to us. We haven't heard from her all day. At 12:41 p.m., Chris called Nicole Atkinson. At 12:43 p.m., Shanann's friend Cassie messaged Watts. Shanann is in a very bad way emotionally, and I'm worried about her. I know you are having issues, but I don't know to what extent. But I do know I have never seen her so broken to an extent I am worried. At 12:44 p.m., Watts replied back saying Shanann went to a
She won't tell me where though. When I get home, I will update you.
friend's house with the kids and won't tell where. At 12:46 p.m., Cassie replied to Chris, telling him that nobody else except her and Nikki know about the separation, and if Shanann isn't with herself or Nikki, then where could she possibly be? Cassie went on to say, Shanann's car and shoes and everything are at the house. At 12:48 p.m., Watts responded, I told Nikki about it so she wouldn't freak out anymore at the house. I think Christina knows as well. We talked last night and I told her I wanted to sell the house, get something smaller. Separation would be best right now. I really don't want you to think I'm a bad person, Cassie. I mean, that's just a real fucked up thing to say and a major red flag. At 12:49 p.m., Cassie replied, Right now, I don't care about you or your relationship or what type of person you are or not, or what I think of you. At 12:50 p.m., Watts responded to the realtor, telling her the basement is still unfinished and no other upgrades. At 1:03 p.m., Cassie replied,
But during that 12:49 to 12:50, the Vivint system was going off of the basement door and the garage door as well.
to Watts, saying her only concern was for Shanann's well-being. She told Chris Nikki is calling the police, telling Chris that Shanann is broken emotionally and her blood sugar levels had dropped. They were worried that she may be passed out in the house. So unless you want the police to bust your door down, you better get home now and check on your family.
That's
At
why he came back.
1:03 p.m., the realtor replied, suggesting a house at 6508 Saratoga. At 1:05 p.m., Watts told Cassie, I'm going home, Cassie. On my way. Don't call the police. I will be there in 45.
She did
At
anyways.
1:06 p.m., Cassie thanked him and explained her fears. Nikki and I know what state Shanann was in all weekend, and we want to see she isn't in the house because this is seriously a concern. At 1:07 p.m., Watts called Cassie and held a 1-minute conversation. At 1:13 p.m., Watts' workmate Troy asked Watts if everything was okay and if he needed anything to let him know. 1:14 p.m., the realtor asked Watts if he preferred a 3-car garage. Watts replied, 3-car garage.
I'm so distraught that this man is literally talking to a realtor, knowing that he just annihilated his family, and he's wanting a 3-car garage.
I will drive by 6508 address when I get home.
6508 Saratoga. So literally within walking distance. So doesn't look any different, smaller. I wonder, let me look at that up. Okay, so I'm so lost. I know this is not very important, but so here's the house that Chris and Watts and them were at. The house that they wanted to go to is over here. I wonder if I can get to the street. Can I go to street view? Street view. Isn't it just the same house? Hold on. Hold the phone. So this is the house. Wait. He was trying to buy this house? What? It's literally the same size house. Right? 5. This makes no sense. But if we go back to the location of their house, which is right here, if I can get there. How do I go to Street View again? Street View. Am I just being a dummy? It's literally the same house. I'm sorry, but this makes no
home.
sense.
I find the realtor to be rather annoying. I mean, what part of downgrading a big house is a 3-garage home on the same street? Chris's phone goes silent for about 25 minutes. Nikki Atkinson calls Chris, and again at 1 p.m. At 2:10 p.m., Shanann's friend Christine messaged Chris and asked, "What is going on? Where are you? We are so worried." At 2:11 p.m., Chris messaged Shanann's phone asking Shanann, "Where are you?"
You knew where she
So
was.
literally seconds later, we see Chris Watts pull up to his house on the body cam. When I look at the timeline activity of Watts's phone, I notice the activity from the time he arrives at Survey is non-stop on his phone.
So how could he have done all that?
6:31, 6:32, 6:33, 6:35, 6:39, 6:41, 6:43, 6:44 until around 6:45
So how
a.m.
the
We
hell?
then see a 15-minute gap in any phone activity. Then at 6:59 a.m., Watts gives a short reply saying, "Okay." Then no activity until 7:43 a.m. That gives Chris a 1-hour gap from 6:45 till 7:43 a.m. I feel this would be the time of death for Bella and Cece. Chris Watts starts to text a lot from 7:43 a.m. on. I personally feel like the tone of Chris's messages and replies seem to be a lot different after that 1-hour gap.
Yeah.
Even calling Shanann's phone, the children's school, and the realtor all by 9 a.m. Then Watts started Googling things like the hotel in Aspen and the music lyrics, like he had no worries in the world at that time. Let me know in the comments below what time gaps you find fitting for what Chris Watts has done. Looking back in hindsight, what would Chris Watts have done if any of his workmates had have been on their way to Survey 319? And is that possibly the reason Watts put the gas can in the back of his truck that morning? Was he prepared to blow up the Survey
Yes,
in
I
order
think
not to be caught if he ran out of time
Plus, you see 2 shovels in here.
during his plan?
So a lot of this really did not make sense whatsoever when it came to. Well, I can't say that it didn't make sense. For one, they wanted a smaller house, but yet the house that they were looking at to buy was the same flipping house. So that makes no sense. They're literally priced almost exactly the same. But then him trying to play it off that Shanann was, or he was messaging Shanann's phone, like, "Where are you? I'm worried about you," kind of, that's a whole bunch of malarkey. But the amount of times that this man was texting to verify that nobody would come out was shocking to say the least. And then right after he had murdered them, he just clicked right into, "Oh, I'm free," and started looking at all the differences between, or not look at the differences, but he was looking for a hotel, canceling the kid's school and all that. It just, and then he didn't talk to Nicole Kessinger because she should have been with him. Her phone pinged at Frederick, Colorado. She didn't show up to work until late. She was only at work for like an hour. And then when she did come to work, she called her sex therapist twice. Oh man. And then people sit there and say Team Chris. Like, Are you kidding me? So with that being said, for the stuff that we just looked at, if you guys could do me a solid favor and comment exactly time. Well, I don't want to do that. What do I want you guys to do? I want you guys to comment exactly when he was actually doing everything, the deed that he was doing. And do you see any indifferences from what she had said and what I have said? Is there anything that sparks up an interest that you might have found that you want to talk about? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like button. That hopefully one day all this stuff that we are doing will make a difference in this case. Maybe so, maybe not. We have no idea, but you gotta try. Again, I thank you guys all for being here. Please take care, be safe, and as always, keep nerding on, and we will see you guys in the next video.